What is up, guys? Player One here. This is the video on the Big Ten. I'm gonna go over all the rest of the Big Ten, besides Michigan. If you want to see my thoughts on Michigan, go watch my last video where I talked about the Michigan-Hawaii game. This is for the rest of the Big Ten. I'm a Michigan fan, so I make a separate video on them, and then I'm going to talk about the rest of the Big Ten and how they looked this weekend. Starting with the very first game at the very top of the list, Ohio State went up against Arkansas State. Now, Ohio State looked really good here. 45-12 was the final against Arkansas State. C.J. Stroud looked really good. 16 of 24, 351 yards, 4 touchdowns. C.J. Stroud looks a lot better than he did last week against Notre Dame. Defense still looks strong. I believe the score was 24. Yeah, it was 24-9 at halftime. So it was a little bit closer, but pulled away in the end. Held Arkansas State to just 3 points in the second half. So Ohio State looked dominant. They look like Ohio State. I mean, there's not really much you can say about a win over Arkansas State. They did what they had to do. I believe they didn't cover the spread, though, but neither did Michigan. It's all right. Ohio State did what they had to do, get the job done, get some good numbers out of C.J. Stroud. And defense looked good as usual. So Ohio State wins, looks good. Michigan State went up against a absolutely terrible Akron team and beat them 52-0. So Peyton Thorne really didn't look good in this game. He went 18 of 28, 212 yards, and he had 2 interceptions. So his stats alone aren't really that bad, but the 2 interceptions really is questionable. Like, how are you throwing 2 interceptions against Akron? But Berger, their running back, looked really good. He was their player of the game again. 17 carries, 107 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground for Michigan State with Berger. Again, I still don't think he's a Kenneth Walker, but Berger looks really good. It looks like Michigan State may be relying on their run game again this year and their defense, kind of like how they did last year. So, like I said, I don't think Berger is a Kenneth Walker, but we have yet to see what he really does against good teams, if he can thrash those really good teams as well. But Berger looks really good. Michigan State looks really good. They've gone up into the rankings now because the rankings are already out when I have recorded this. Ohio State stayed at 3, and I think Michigan State's up to 11 now, so they're inching towards that top 10 spot. Michigan State wins, looks good doing it. Not much to say, really, against Akron. Wisconsin embarrasses themselves, losing 17-14 to Washington State. How are you losing to the Cougars, man? Come on, you're losing to a bunch of old pretty ladies. Like, really? Come on now. Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's a terrible joke. Wisconsin loses 17-14 at home. They're no longer ranked. They were at 19. Now they are no longer ranked. They are 1-1 now after a dominant performance that was a shutout last week. They looked really good last week. Now, it was against a much more inferior team, but nonetheless, they look really good. Washington State beats them 17-14. And last week I was saying how Purdue and Wisconsin are probably the 2 best teams in the West, the Big Ten West right now. I still think Purdue is up there. Wisconsin, we'll see how they continue to do the rest of the season. They're always in it because it's the Big Ten West, and they're pretty terrible in the Big Ten West right now. But you just don't like to see that out of Wisconsin. If you're a Wisconsin fan, I mean, I don't really care either way. I'm not a fan of Wisconsin, so I could care less if they win or lose. But if they're gonna lose, can at least be to other Big Ten teams and not to Washington State. Come on, man. Not Illinois. We'll talk about Illinois later. Minnesota. This is the other team right now, in the West, in the Big Ten West, that to me is probably one of the best teams in the West. It's Minnesota and Purdue for me. Minnesota beats Western Illinois 62-10. Now, I know it's Western Illinois. I think Western Illinois has won 4 games in the last 3 years or something, or 3 games in the last 4 years, something like that. Some terrible stat like that. They're no good. I understand that, but 62 points is nice to see for Minnesota. I think they're one of the more complete teams in the West right now. Them and Purdue. I still would say Purdue is the best team in the West right now. But Minnesota, I mean, they did what they had to do. 62-10 win over Western Illinois. Northwestern. Northwestern was down big to Duke. Not the basketball team. Not the basketball team for Duke. Not the Duke basketball team. The Duke football team. They were down 21-0 at one point. Came back and had a chance to win. Had a chance to take the lead. Just never happened. Duke ran away with it 31-23. Northwestern is garbage. Northwestern is terrible. Northwestern is an embarrassment in Big Ten football. One of the embarrassing teams, the most embarrassing teams in the conference. If you're a Northwestern fan, there's not really much to be happy about. There's not really much to say. When your quarterback has to pass the ball 60 times a game and completes only 36 of them for 435 yards and 2 touchdowns, and you still can't win the game against Duke, there's something wrong with that team. They're not good. They're not a good football team. Northwestern has a lot they need to fix. And I don't hate Northwestern. This is not me hating on Northwestern. They just have a lot they need to fix and get better at. So Northwestern, another embarrassing team. They're 1-1 now with an 0-1 record at home. You lose your home opener. You just don't want to see stuff like that happening. So Northwestern, get your act together. Penn State, they looked great. They destroyed Ohio. Sean Clifford had a very good game. 19 of 27, 213 yards, and a touchdown. Ran the ball really good with Singleton, 10 carries, 179 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So running the ball looked really good. 46-10 was the final against Ohio. I mean, Penn State just did whatever they wanted here. I know Ohio's a horrible team, but Penn State, I mean, they pretty much did what they had to do. They went out there and they beat up on an inferior team. That's what most of these teams are doing anyway. So 46-10, Penn State looks really good. Do I think they're the best team in the East? No. Do I still think that they're probably the second or third best team in the East? Probably. At worst, the fourth. But I wouldn't put them there. I would say probably the third best team, but behind Michigan and Ohio State, at least right now. We'll see how the season goes and if that changes. But as of right now, that's how I feel about it. So Penn State looks really good. Maryland, another team that looks really good in the East. 56-21 against Charlotte. This Maryland offense is really scary good. But this Charlotte, I understand that, but this Maryland defense is still a concern for me. Allowing 21 points against Charlotte, 56-21 is the final, by the way. It's still a concern for me, 21 points. I know it was probably... Actually, no. It wasn't in garbage time, actually. It was... They were up... So, Maryland was up big at halftime. They were up 35-14 at halftime. And then Charlotte only scored one more touchdown in fourth quarter. But Charlotte's not a good football team, and they scored on you guys at least once in 3 out of the 4 quarters. I know it seems nitpicky, but yeah, I'm kind of concerned for that defense of Maryland. Offense looks amazing though. Talia Tungavailoa, 27 of 31, 391 yards, 4 touchdowns, and one touchdown on the ground. 5 total touchdowns. He looks really good. Talia Tungavailoa. Didn't really run the ball much. 4 carries, 61 yards for McDonald, and a touchdown. Most of this was about that air raid, throwing the ball for the entire game. Maryland looked really good in this game offensively. Defensively, looks okay right now. We'll see how they do against tougher opponents in the coming weeks. My friend Evan Chino, go subscribe to him on YouTube. He made a good point about Maryland. He's like, they always start out the season beating up on inferior teams, looking really good, and then by the time they start playing Big Ten opponents, they completely fall apart and can't win a game. And it's true. I mean, that's just how it's been for Maryland in the last few years, so you can't blame me or him for being skeptical about Maryland. But yeah, as of right now, they look really good. 56-21 Maryland. Iowa. Now, I was kind of hoping Iowa would win this game 7-3. I would have laughed so hard. I know I went off on Iowa last week. I even uploaded the clips separately. You can go watch it if you want. Iowa football is garbage. Played Iowa State this week. Another low-scoring affair. Another sad offensive performance by this Iowa offense. I don't really know what to say about Iowa. 10-7 against Iowa State. Iowa had a chance to tie this game in the end, missed the field goal. But Iowa State wins here for the first time against Iowa since 2014. I just don't really have much to say about Iowa anymore. I mean, they look like the exact same team we saw last week. The only difference was their 7 points was actually a touchdown this time. It wasn't 2 safeties and a field goal like it was last week, which is just so ridiculous to me. But Iowa scoring 14 points in their first 2 games, and they're not even ranked opponents. It's not a good look. Defense still looks really good, so they can. I think their defense could still keep them in most games, but I think once they start playing teams like Michigan and Ohio State, if they play Ohio State, just better teams, they're not going to be able to keep up with those schools. That offense is not good enough to win them any game, in my opinion, unless they're playing someone really horrible. And, South Dakota State's not a good football team. Like last week, they played South Dakota State, barely beat them by 4. 7 total points, couldn't even get in the end zone. They got in the end zone this time around. The only reason Iowa got in the end zone at all was because they blocked a punt. They blocked 2 punts, actually, in this game. Iowa blocked the first punt, got the ball on the Iowa State 15 or 16-yard line, and scored. It's like, okay, great. They got points. They scored their first touchdown of the season on offense. Or just in general, really. And then Iowa State had 3 points. They got a field goal. It was 7-3 for the longest time, like it was last week for Iowa against South Dakota State. Iowa blocked a second punt and got the ball back around the same spot, 15, 16-yard line. Got down to the Iowa State 1-yard line. 1-yard line. I think on second and goal or third and goal, and fumbled the football. Iowa State picked it up, did nothing with the ball, punted it back to Iowa. Iowa did nothing with the ball, punted it back to Iowa State. Iowa State ended up scoring in the 4th quarter a touchdown, taking a 10-7 lead, and then Iowa got the ball, got into Iowa State territory somehow, lined up for a field goal and missed the field goal. It wasn't even close. It was wide left or wide right or whatever it was, and lost this game. I think it was wide left. I think it was a 46-yard field goal. Completely didn't even come close. Iowa loses to Iowa State for the first time since 2014. And again, there's not really much I can say other than Iowa's offense is pitiful and really terrible. Just really bad, really hard to watch. Like last year, but somehow I think it's worse. Yeah, Iowa sucks. Moving on. Illinois, though. If there's another team you could argue is probably another one of the better teams in the Big Ten West, Illinois is one of them. 24-3 over Virginia. Virginia was a team that beat them by 4 touchdowns last year, so getting this win over Virginia 24-3 in such a dominant way was great to see for Illinois. While Illinois I don't think is a great team, they're definitely improving. They're definitely getting a lot better. Excuse me. But Illinois wins here 24-3. DeVito, 17-25, 196 yards and 2 touchdowns. They had 20 carries for 146 yards on the ground. So they just looked really good offensively, at least according to the stats. Maybe it was worse than... I didn't really watch this game, so I'm going based off of that. I did see some highlights. I watched the final drive on the Big Ten Network. They go over all the games, show highlights for every Big Ten school. So I've at least seen highlights for all of these teams in the Big Ten. But, yeah. Illinois looks good. These videos, I promise you, will be shorter in the future. Once we get into conference play, there'll be less games to talk about. But as of right now, all these teams are playing non-con games, and they're all playing at the same time, so I have 14 games I gotta go over. So it takes a little bit of time. And it's not really that exciting either, because they're not really playing anybody. But yeah, Illinois wins 24-3. Looks really good. Illinois should hopefully be able to keep this going for them. Purdue, my number one in the West right now, Purdue, beat Indiana State 56-0. I mean, what did you want them to do? Aiden O'Connell looked amazing. 17 of 19, 211 yards, 4 touchdowns in the air. I mean, I've said it before. I said it in week 0. I really like Aiden O'Connell. I think he's great. I think he's a great 6th-year senior, super senior. I want to see him go to the NFL. I really like him. So hopefully he can keep this up. Maccabee, I think is his name. 13 carries, 78 yards, a touchdown. Obviously, Purdue is not a running team. They threw the ball most of the game, and it works for them. So especially against Indiana State, who's no good. 56-0, Purdue wins. Rutgers looked good as well, beating Wagner 66-7. 10 of 13 passing, 156 yards and 2 touchdowns for Simon. 8 carries for 69 yards and a touchdown on the ground. And their leading receiver, Krushank, 4 receptions, 64 yards, a touchdown. Excuse me. Rutgers wins 66-7 over Wagner and looks good doing it. Not really much to say there. Indiana. Indiana beat Idaho 35-22. They didn't look good. Indiana did not look good like they did last week beating Illinois. I think Illinois wanted some redemption after, losing the way they did last week to Indiana. It was like, man, I don't know. Is Indiana any good? Is Illinois just really that bad? But Illinois looked really good this week against Virginia. Maybe Virginia's just that bad. I don't know. But Indiana almost... They were down to Idaho. They were down 10-0, and that was the halftime score, 10-0. But Indiana came out, out of the gate, took the lead, and kind of just ran away with it after that. Idaho did have some more points, like the 22 points or whatever. But Indiana, I mean, they won, and they look good. But I don't know, man. I really don't know. I don't know how to feel about Indiana right now. They've either looked good like they did last week, or they just didn't look good at all. I'm in the neighborhood of, I think Indiana is not good at all. Indiana is probably quite terrible, and just barely beating Idaho kind of just shows that. I don't know, maybe Illinois just had that bad of a game last week, but I want to give Indiana the benefit of a doubt on that one. Seems like a fluke, though. I'm just being honest. Finally, the last game I have to talk about here, Nebraska. If there's one team I could rant about but won't, it's Nebraska. Because with Iowa, it just feels like I'd be beating a dead horse. There's just really no point in making fun of them. Nebraska, I mean, there's just no excuse. Is Nebraska that inept? Is their defense that bad? I think out of all of the teams in the Big Ten, no team is in a worse spot than Nebraska. No team. 45-42 loss to Georgia Southern. How do you lose to Georgia Southern? How do you lose to Georgia Southern? This is something that I won't be able to really understand. This isn't Georgia. This is Georgia Southern. So, this morning, Sunday, the University of Nebraska announced Scott Frost is fired. Honestly, he should have been fired after week 0. He should have been fired. He should have already been fired after the Northwestern game. But losing to Georgia Southern was the straw that broke the camel's back. Scott Frost is absolutely horrible. His time at Nebraska was really bad for Nebraska. 16-31. 16 wins, 31 losses with Scott Frost as head coach at Nebraska, at the University of Nebraska. I don't know how you let it get to that point where you're losing that much. But Nebraska is really bad. I don't know if it's a talent thing, but to me it seems like a coaching thing. It really doesn't seem like... it just doesn't. It doesn't seem like a talent thing. It seems like talent-wise, they're not that bad. But when it comes to coaching, they're terrible. I don't know. I don't really know what to say about Nebraska. I feel bad for the University of Nebraska. I feel bad for those players. Scott Frost is terrible. He got fired, rightfully so. He needed to go. He was in a press conference saying, "Oh, I'm blessed to be here. I love this university. I love this program. I love this football team." You can say whatever you want, man, but when you're not winning games and you're constantly blaming your players and your coaches for losing games, yeah, it's just not a good look, man. The Scott Frost experiment failure. He did absolutely nothing at Nebraska. Nebraska football could not be in a darker spot, honestly. Now, whenever I think of how bad Nebraska looks right now, I'm thinking of Michigan in 2020. Now, I think Michigan was still in a better spot than Nebraska was now, even in 2020 when we were at our worst. But I don't know. Somebody needs... They have an interim coach right now. I don't remember his name, and I don't really care to remember his name. And it says it literally right here. Nebraska students chant "Fire Frost" after Georgia Southern win. pitiful, pathetic. You don't want to see that or hear that from your crowd. You just don't. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got to say about Nebraska. They're in a really dark spot right now. They're not the worst team in the Big Ten, but in terms of where they're at as a program, I think they're in a darker spot than all those other teams. Because while teams like Illinois and, you know, those other really bad teams in the Big Ten, Northwestern, while they're in dark spots, they're just, it's kind of a thing like they're more used to it, I guess. Or they still, even though they're losing, they still look better than Nebraska. Nebraska, man, they just lose games they shouldn't lose. So Frost got fired. They have an interim coach right now. They need to get a head coach at Nebraska that can really fire up that team and bring some good positive energy out of that team, because those players just don't look like they want to be out there. They don't look like they want to play. They don't look like they have any fire underneath them to go out there and want to win a football game. But anyways, moving on. I know I talked about the Big Ten. I want to kind of talk about the rest of the top 25 and then a little bit of the top 25 teams. And then I want to talk about the teams in the Big Ten that looked the best this week. So Bama and Texas. This is a great game. Bama ended up winning this game 20-19 with a last-second field goal. Bama didn't look very good in this game. They had a lot of penalties, like 15, 16 penalties. Nick Saban obviously looked really frustrated by the end of it. Texas played hard but couldn't get the job done. But this was a great game. I was kind of hoping Texas would win just because I'm tired of Alabama, but that didn't happen this week. Bama actually went down one spot in the rankings. Georgia took the number one spot, and Bama is now at number 2. Georgia, speaking of Georgia, they beat Samford 33-0. Whatever. Ohio State, we talked about them. Michigan, this is just the top 25. Clemson beat Furman 35-12. Kind of slowed down in the second half and let Furman score some points they shouldn't have. I think Clemson's defense is great, but let off too many points in the first half, even against Furman. Texas A&M lost to Appalachian State. This was really funny to me. I wish Texas A&M was like 4th or 5th ranked, because when Appalachian State beat Michigan back in 2007, we were 5th ranked, and Texas A&M is now 6th ranked. Yeah, but whatever. Appalachian State beats Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M has dropped down to 24 now in the rankings. So, yeah, no good for Texas A&M. Yeah, 24 from 6. Oklahoma beat Kent State 33-3. Notre Dame, watch this whole game too, losing to Marshall at home. Marcus Freeman is 0-3 as the Notre Dame head coach. The first time, I believe, ever a Notre Dame head coach has started a season 0-3. Not looking good for Notre Dame. They just, I don't know what it is. They look too slow. Their offense doesn't look good. They just don't look good. Marshall just played tougher. Like with Bama, it just, I think most of the reason why Bama only won by 1 point was because they just made so many mistakes. They were kicking themselves. They were just making too many mistakes. And still somehow pulled it out because they are a better team. Just talent in the end ended up winning. But with Marshall, they looked better. They were coached better. They played better. Those players looked tougher, stronger, faster. They just looked like, and they looked like they wanted it more. Notre Dame, I mean, the score was 26-21, but Notre Dame in the end ended up looking, that 21 points, that should have been like 15 points or 14 points or whatever it was, because they didn't look good by the end of this game. That was a garbage time touchdown at the end for Notre Dame. They scored that touchdown with 14 seconds left in the game, and it wasn't going to win them this game. Marshall, props to Marshall. They looked really good in this game, and I think they're ranked now, I believe. So good for Marshall. And Notre Dame dropped out. They're out of the top 25 completely. It's just kind of crazy how in just a couple of weeks of football and just 2 games, Notre Dame went from 4th ranked to unranked. I mean, that's probably the steepest drop-off I've seen so quickly in a long time, or if not ever. BYU and Baylor had a great double overtime game last night that I also watched the last of. BYU ended up winning 26-20, so another bit top 10 team because Baylor was 9 and BYU is 21. I believe BYU moved way up, and Baylor, I'm not sure if they're still in it. I think they also got kicked out of the top 25 if I'm not mistaken. But this was a great game. USC beat Stanford 41-28. Oklahoma State 34-17 over Arizona State. Kentucky beat Florida. Florida just got in the top 25 after beating Utah last week. And Kentucky ended up coming in and beating them 26-16. Florida loses. Utah was a little bit upset over losing to Florida State. They beat Southern Utah 73-7. Just kind of like make them feel better about themselves, I guess. Miami beat Southern Miss at 30-7. Tennessee beat Pittsburgh 34-27. Pittsburgh not looking too good. NC State looks better after they come back and beat Charleston Southern 55-3. All right, so in terms of the Big Ten, which teams look the best? Ohio State, Michigan State, Minnesota, Penn State, Maryland, and Illinois, and Purdue. So a lot of them. Rutgers also looks really good. So 9 out of the 14 teams looks really good. Teams that look really bad right now. Wisconsin, they don't look good now. Northwestern looks really bad. Iowa still looks bad. And Nebraska, the most disappointing one. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where we're at right now. If we had to put any players in terms of a Heisman candidate right now, I think the only one realistically right now is C.J. Stroud. But who knows if J.J. McCarthy can get himself in that conversation, if Talia Tagovailoa can get himself into that conversation. We'll see. Hopefully. I want to see more Big Ten representation. I don't care who it is. More Big Ten representation in the Heisman candidacy because I'm tired of it going to SEC guys every year. And I know that's just how it is, but I want to see the Big Ten do more. But anyways, that's how I feel about the Big Ten in Week 2. Week 3 is next week, so Michigan plays UConn. I'm going to that game. I'll get some footage there. Nebraska plays Oklahoma. Oklahoma is now number 6 in the country, looking really good. So Nebraska, next week you have a funeral at home. Northwestern plays Southern Illinois. They should win that one. Purdue and Syracuse. Purdue should definitely win that one. It shouldn't even be competition to them. Indiana, Western Kentucky could be a good game. Indiana is favored by 7. Rutgers and Temple. Rutgers should run away with that one. Penn State and Auburn could be a great game. I think Penn State will win this one, but it'll be close. Minnesota, Colorado. Minnesota will destroy Colorado. Wisconsin should destroy New Mexico State. Wisconsin better get their crap together because they play Ohio State after New Mexico State. That's quite a big of a jump. Ohio State plays Toledo. Ohio State will win that one easy. Washington and Michigan State is another one that could be really good. Washington's actually favored by 2 in this one. Iowa and Nevada. Iowa's actually favored to win by 21 in this game. They haven't even scored that many points in a game yet. So, I don't know about that, but we'll see. Is Nevada really that bad? I guess they are, but Iowa should hopefully bounce back a little bit for them. And Maryland plays SMU. So, that's what's going on right now in the Big Ten. That's what's for next week. This is the video how I felt about them this week in Week 2. So yeah, I'm going to try and keep up with this every week. Thank you guys for watching, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.